So today we're going to talk about some tricks that you can deploy to get more fruits and vegetables into your diet if you're concerned about the cost of doing so, or you're concerned about the other side, which is if I don't buy organic fruits and vegetables, am I going to have a lot of pesticides entering into my body? And we like to focus on the number one priority being to get more fruits and vegetables into your diet. And that's because only 1 in 10 Americans currently eat and consume enough fruits and vegetables. And there's been extensive studies done showing that that can reduce your risk of many chronic illnesses such as cancer and heart disease. So we really encourage people to start incorporating much more fruits and vegetables into their diet. But there's a lot of ways that you can do that and still save some money and not have a huge increase in your food spending. So one of the main rules that I like to focus on is categorizing vegetables into 2 main categories. And I'm going to talk about the ones that are the biggest offenders in the one area that are more risky and have a higher risk of bringing pesticides into your body. And then we're going to talk about some fruits and vegetables that are actually very low risk and maybe not as critical to buy organic in the grocery store. So what I want to start with today is what has been kind of coined the dirty dozen. And these are the fruits and vegetables that have the highest amount of pesticide residue, either in number and quantity that these fruits and vegetables are exposed to, or just the sheer volume that they're exposed to throughout the manufacturing or the growing process. So the first one I want to start with is strawberries. And it's probably the biggest offender. It can be traced back, even a single strawberry sample can have up to 18 different pesticide residues on it. It's a bit of a challenge because it is a hard fruit to clean because of all the little seeds on the outside, and it's also a delicate fruit. It also absorbs a lot of the pesticides. And in addition to the pesticides that could be residual on the strawberries, most strawberry farmers also inject their soil with sterilizers, gas sterilizers that deplete a lot of the organisms in the soil. So from an environmental standpoint, even though that may not be residuals left on your strawberries, it's not good for the environment, and it's been linked to a lot of challenges with reduced microbiome and microorganisms in the soil. The second offender is actually spinach. So obviously that's unfortunate. It's a very healthy leafy green, but it's also very delicate, and it's also loved by a lot of insects. So there's a lot of insecticides that are used on spinach, and it's one that can also have more than 15 different pesticide residues associated with it. So it's one, because it's hard to wash off, because it penetrates into the leaf, I really try to buy spinach that's organic. The third one, which surprises a lot of people, it's a little bit more of a robust leafy green and gotten a lot of exposure in the last years, kind of the kale craze, would be kale. And again, it's a leafy green, especially curly kale. It's a little bit difficult to clean and get in all the nooks and crannies. But it's also, a lot of insects really enjoy eating kale, just like we do. So it's one that also is exposed to a lot of different pesticides. One of the most common ones, which is in 60% of kale on the market, is Dacthal. And this is actually classified in the EPA as a potential carcinogen. And it was banned in 2009 across the European Union, yet we're still using it widely in the US. So just one that is difficult to wash off of produce. So I try to get kale organically if I'm gonna eat kale. The next one is apples. Apples go through a pretty extensive spraying process just even to prevent the insects. So a lot of apple farms will spray at least 7 times a year their apple orchards, and that can be everything from fungicides to insecticides. Apples are a difficult crop to grow organically, but they are widely available. So it's a crop that I also, even if I'm gonna peel it, I try to buy organically because the pesticides can penetrate through the skin of the apple. And related to that are also nectarines and peaches. They're all exposed to a wide variety of pesticides and also a high volume of pesticides. So those are combined part of the dirty dozen. The next one is grapes. Grapes have a very thin skin, and a lot of the nutrients of the grape are concentrated in the skin, but also a lot of pesticides can be. And it's also one, because you usually get a whole cluster of grapes, it's a little bit challenging to wash it off, and also some of it has penetrated inside the grapes. So for me, I just play it safe and I try to buy organic grapes if I'm gonna consume them. And then we have pears. It's very similar to the apples, also a very aggressive spraying process to be able to get you, a beautiful pear in the store that doesn't have insect or potentially mildew issues. And then we have tomatoes, which are a very common crop, and they're also sprayed pretty heavily, and pesticides can penetrate through the thin skin walls. And then the last two is celery and potatoes. Again, both of those use pesticides that can penetrate through the skin that are very difficult to wash off of the produce. So these are the 12 that I really try to focus on buying organic, and definitely whether I buy organic or non-organic, I always wash this produce because I know even organically, they can have synthetic pesticides on them. It's at a much more reduced amount because they're much more tightly controlled. But these are the crops that are very challenging to grow that usually will expose me and my body to the most chemicals. So now we're going to talk about the other spectrum of fruits and vegetables. And these are the ones that actually have much less risk of pesticide residue. Now, you can never guarantee that one of these crops is not overly sprayed by a certain farm, but in general, these have 70% of these crops have no pesticide residues on them when they're tested, and that's even non-organic. So these are the ones that if you're gonna try to split your budget up, which I do often, you can look at these ones and feel pretty good about buying even non-organic and knowing that you're still reducing your pesticide burden in your body. So the first one, which I gotta be honest, the first time I found out surprised me because I have been to some avocado farms and they can spray for powdery mildew and different things that can affect the avocado orchards. But they're a pretty robust tree, and because of the skin and that we don't eat the skin of the avocado, the part that's edible actually has very little, if any, pesticide residue still on it. So you can enjoy your avocados. It's a little bit hard sometimes to even find organic avocados. So I was really pleased that I could buy conventional avocados and not have as much of a pesticide burden in my body. You also have onions, and even though onions, when you peel them, they have a very thin skin, they're a pretty robust crop. So we also grow a lot of these. We do grow them organically on our farm, but you don't need to spray them a lot. Most insects, it's almost an antiviral, antibacterial. Most insects do not like alliums, so your garlic and your onions. So a lot of those are sprayed a lot less, and then you're peeling them, so you're actually also taking some of that residue off. I don't have it here, but two other in the top three are sweet corn and frozen sweet peas. Sweet corn, I've had people ask me, well, should I avoid it if it's GMO, it's not organic? But a lot of the sweet corn on the market is not GMO. Most of the GMO corn is actually for grain. It goes into most of your processed foods. But a lot of the produce you buy in the grocery store is not GMO. It hasn't really made it into the area yet. It's starting to make it into tomatoes and potatoes and a little bit of corn, but a lot of the GMO corn is going to feed, like almost over 80% of it is going to feed livestock. So sweet corn is actually a really good one. There's not a lot of pesticides on it. And it's something that you can consume and know that you're not putting a lot of pesticides in your body. Another one, it wasn't in season and I couldn't find it right now, but pineapple also does not require a lot of pesticides, and you're also peeling and taking the skin off of the pineapple. So the edible part of the pineapple usually has very little pesticide residue on it. And then one of my favorites, which I love, and I grow this, it's a perennial. Because it's a perennial, it builds up a very robust environment around itself, and there's not actually that many pests that will eat your asparagus. So there's asparagus beetles, but there's ways that you can naturally avoid those beetles. And they pop up, actually, the spears pop up pretty quickly out of the soil, so they're not exposed as long of a season as a lot of other crops. So you can enjoy your asparagus, and you don't have to buy that organically if you still want a reduced pesticide burden. The other one is kiwis. These grow on a vine, and I actually eat the skin. Some people peel the skin off, but I like it. And that I was really happy to see that it was very low on the list, and there's very little pesticide residue associated with kiwis. So enjoy that fruit. The other one that's kind of in the tropical area is papayas. I don't eat them that often because they don't grow in my regions, but if I am in a place that grows them, like Hawaii or Mexico, I do sometimes partake. I love papaya. Most of the papaya on the market is GMO because we would have mainly lost the crop due to some different viruses, but it's one that I still have here and there. And then eggplant, I also didn't have an eggplant to bring, but eggplant is actually got very little pesticide residue on it as well. And then we have cabbage, which is great, especially it's a early spring crop, it's a fall crop, it's great with fiber, good for your digestion, and it's a very low residue, low pesticide residue crop as well. And then we have cauliflower and broccoli. The good thing is this would be very difficult to wash. I still wash mine, but as you can see, if it had a lot of spray, this would be really hard to clean off. But luckily it has very little pesticide residue in most samples tested. And then the last one on the list is mushrooms, which is great. Most mushrooms are cultured in indoor facilities or outdoor facilities in spring. And these are usually quite clean and they don't spray a lot of pesticides on them. So you don't have a lot of residue if you're consuming mushrooms, which is great because they are a bit difficult to clean, but you can still clean them. So those are the clean 15 that I say if you really can't buy all your produce organically, those are the 15 that I would say you have much lower risk than the dirty dozen here that are much more heavily sprayed when this is data reviewed by the USDA and the EPA every year. And one other interesting fact that I wanted to add is a lot of people are not familiar with some of the labels that you see in the grocery store. So these are like product locator units. These are universal codes that the grocery stores can use to say, you know, this is a Honeycrisp apple. But what a lot of people don't know is this code is normally a 4-digit code if it's just a conventional crop. If it's organic, if you ever have a question, if you have 2 bins next to each other, if there's a 9 in front of it and you have 5 digits, that's the symbol for organic. So you can see I have 2 apples here. One is a conventional one, it's 4 digits. And I have one that is an organic apple and it's 5 digits. So these are codes. The main 2 that I look for is the 9 is organic, and that means it has 5 digits. 4 is just your base conventional. And the other 5-digit code that a lot of people are not aware of is the number 8. And that actually means it's genetically engineered. So even though I said a lot of these crops are not yet genetically engineered, that is one way that you can see some squash are engineered, some potatoes, tomatoes, that's starting to enter the market more. And that is one way that you can start to detect that if you're concerned about it.